We will continue to look at how the Northeast Greensboro community seeks racial equity for community health. The Northeast Greensboro community decided to take action, to organize, to solve their own community's issues. Dr. Goldie Wells and her neighbors started the Concerned Citizens of Northeast Greensboro in 1998. Between 2009 and 2011, the Concerned Citizens of Northeast Greensboro joined forces with a new citywide community group called Citizens for Economic and Environmental Justice. This new group was formed to fight against the reopening of the White Street landfill, which was located also in Northeast Greensboro. Through years of community organizing, political pressure campaigns, and court challenges, the community is ultimately successful in blocking the landfill from being reopened. At the September 2011 celebration of the win to keep the landfill closed, staff members from the Fund for Democratic Communities approached Reverend Dr. Goldie Wells with the idea of turning this community organizing power towards starting a community-owned grocery store. In 2012, a group of 10 neighbor residents formally decide to form the Renaissance Community Co-op Steering Committee. For the next several years, the Fund for Democratic Communities went on to partner with those interested in starting the Renaissance Community Co-op and to see it come into existence. The Fund for Democratic Communities provided extensive technical assistance and more than $300,000 in grant funding to support the project during its startup phase. The community faced challenges to their momentum. For example, the local government was hesitant to provide a loan because they didn't believe it could work. Also, there were internalized oppositions to this effort from within the Black community. There were also racial discriminations made about the possibility of this happening from the co-op industry.
I mean, we had to get the property from the city. And so you had some people who were on city council at the time who just on principle, they said it's nothing personal. How can it not be personal when there are kids who don't have access to food in the area? But it's nothing personal. I just don't believe that a city should be a landlord. And so we have to get rid of this property. Well, you don't have to get rid of it. You were holding on to it for the past 20 years. Well, now there's been interest expressed, so we have to get rid of it. And so those kinds of municipal dealings that can seem innocuous but have an effect on people's real lives are important, because that's a part of structural racism, to deny communities of color access to things. We faced opposition from someone who wanted the location that we wanted because he wanted it for a private business deal. And he was going to sell it to some private developers. And there was some support within the community because this person was a Black businessman. And this was a question that became an issue in the broader community. Do we want to have one person who is a Black businessman make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of this deal and call that progress for the Black community? Or do we want thousands of people to own a resource and end a food desert together and call that progress? And so it was a bit of a contentious situation for a while and really challenged a lot of people. But I will say that some of the meetings where people who were very earnestly and deeply invested in the co-op talked about it from both sides of the issue. That was one of the most genuine meetings I've ever been in. Normally people come in with their preconceived ideas and their agenda, and they're going to push it through, and I'm not listening to anyone else. And whoever can get as many people over to their side wins, and we go home. But this was an exercise in thinking together, and I found it really, really inspiring.
One of the first things that we did with the folks here in the community interested in starting the RCC was to send a bunch of people to a conference out in Bloomington, Indiana called the Up and Coming, Up and Running Conference. And it's for food co-ops, like the name says, those who are now up and running but need help kind of refining what they're doing, and those groups that are trying to get up and running, up and coming. So we fell into that category, and we sent a number of people out there who were on the steering committee at the time, some who were still active as board members, some F40C, some Fund for Democratic Community people went. And what they were met with from the existing co-op support organizations, those organizations that provide consulting and technical assistance work, kind of like what the Fund for Democratic Communities has been doing, what they found was a response that said, that's a nice idea, we wish it would work, but the reality is co-ops just don't work in poor Black communities.
Many partners decided that their interests aligned with this effort, and therefore they decided to help.
We all have a role to play. Folks and families in this neighborhood that are already paying their $100 membership because they buy into it. They understand how important it is to do this. So to me, that's extremely exciting and something that shows the promise of this organization. You know, it's not just a group of, just minorities from one issue, but it's been a total collaborative effort across the board of different groups of people, different socioeconomic classes coming together to try to make this work.
And that's the excitement of RCC, is that RCC is trying to pioneer something that everybody wants to see happen, but they're actually willing to put in the hard work, the thankless work to try to innovate a new model. And they've done it by working with really good partners.
So we were very pleased to see the evidence of the preliminary support, and that's why our loan primarily is to cover the development of the membership base and to help support the initial fundraising in this early period to get to the point of having enough initial capital for operations to then open the doors.
Cone Health Foundation decided to give a grant to the RCC initiative. We loved the grassroots effort and the democratically controlled effort. And it doesn't actually neatly fit into our funding priority areas, but it's such an important issue in our city since we are sadly one of the leaders in our nation with food insecurity. Our mission is to measurably improve the health of the residents of the greater Greensboro area.
There are other ways people are playing their part. We've got foundations that are making grants. We've got self-help, providing a leasehold improvement allowance of $35 a square foot, which is worth $350,000. We have lenders from across the country who are vying for the right to participate as a lender in this situation because they see the potential of a community-owned grocery store solving a food desert problem.
Our tagline is working together, building communities. And so I think it's, when Steve talked to me initially about the project, it fit all of the different mission-driven components of the bank, the cooperative piece, as well as the low and moderate income piece. And so I think that it's just a natural fit for the things that we're trying to do nationwide.
Other models have been tried and they've not been successful. And what makes this different is the community ownership that will result. Why not? Let's try it and let's help position well-meaning community leaders who want to take a different approach to increase the assets and the resources available.
What we bring in specific is expertise in cooperatives. There are 4 of us who are trained in cooperative economic development, and that means we bring expertise about cooperative governance. We work with the board and with community members to help them draft the policies they're going to follow.
Self-help's role in this particular instance has been that as a convener, that as a connector, sharing our experience with other grocery stores in low resource areas, sharing our experience as a developer, sharing our experience lending to grocery stores in low resource areas, sharing the expertise of our Healthy Food System fellows to make sure that RCC has the best business plan it can, to make sure that RCC achieves the highest social impacts possible.
We have introduced to Uplift Solutions the idea of community ownership as a viable way for them to solve food desert problems in other parts of the country. They Uplift Solutions is a nonprofit that specializes in bringing full-service grocery stores to food desert communities, particularly urban food desert communities. And previous to this experience, they have always had to search for an entrepreneurial grocer. It isn't always easy to convince an entrepreneurial grocer that they want to open a store in a place that's been abandoned by the grocery industry for 10 or 20 years. With this model of community ownership, there's real potential for lots of community-owned grocery stores to be built in food deserts. And so Uplift is really excited about the potential of this model and really wants to see this model succeed.
Cheryl and I decided to do an owner loan because this was a project we felt very deeply about. We don't often give or even loan the amount of money that we did for this project, but we were simply that committed. And we're going to enjoy seeing this business, this community-owned business, grow and be such a good resource for this community.
Part of our vision includes working toward an inclusive, caring community.
And we know that the Phillips Avenue area has many challenges, and so we focus, our primary focus is on the underserved, and so we really want to see life get better in those areas. And our primary focus is access to health care around 4 priority areas, but certainly there's so many other issues.
For folks that know Phillips Avenue, and I grew up on Phillips Avenue and in that area, there are a lot of hardworking people there that are self-determined to get things done. So after years and years and years of going to different grocery stores, trying to get folks to come into the community and do the right thing, but also make money, there's money to be made there, and no regional or local supermarket will come into it. I see the concerted effort of the community say, hey, we'll do this ourselves.
But there's some people who live in West Greensboro who feel that this should be one community. And they're really concerned about the food desert and the inequities that we have economically.
There are many parts of our city where there are so many resources available within a very short radius, if you will, of where someone is living. And there are other parts of our community where that is not the case. And we need to together think about how we can help people have access to the kinds of services and resources that they need for their families to thrive.
You have people outside of the community that actually took a strong interest in this to get it done. So you have a caring aspect from just outside of the community of folks that said, hey, we're going to get this done and then we're going to do the right thing.
People in poor neighborhoods can learn to take their own power and take care of themselves in a new way. And I hope that our city leaders will see that. I know that they're going to be impressed when they realize how many people around the city are supporting this project, and I know that will mean something to them. And I know that it's going to be a great accomplishment for Greensboro when this cooperative opens.
Me as a member of the County Commissions, I think that it's incumbent upon us to look at this as far as a Department of Social Services issue, a public health issue, and also a community needs issue, and for us to step up and do what we need to do in order to make this happen.
The problem of food deserts is not unique to Greensboro. All over the country, people are experiencing the removal of large grocery stores from their neighborhoods. As people try to think of community-based solutions to this problem, they're looking to the RCC as a model for how they can change that situation.
And indeed, we've heard that other communities around the country are interested in this model. It's time now to act and do something here.
We're tweaking as we go, but I think once we get it started, not just for other parts of Greensboro, but I think it'll be a model that can be used across the country.
It may be a little scary to some people because it's something new. Once in a while, we need to just step out and take a little risk for something that can be wonderful. And we have a great opportunity in Greensboro to lead the whole country into a different path.
This is a project that doesn't necessarily fall into the realm of what people imagine as possible when they think about wealth building or asset building. The fact that this community had a vision, then identify partners to work with, and then pursued that vision and are now on the cusp of realizing it, speaks to the power of communities to do whatever they put their minds to.
Hundreds of people have joined the co-op because they believe and they understand that it's important to do their part to show, yes, working together we can get ourselves the access to fresh food that we need. We're going to have a community-owned grocery store here.
They can learn that you can accomplish something. You don't have to sit back and wait for everything to be done for you or to you.
The solution came. The community organized itself using a lot of its social values of self-determination, and the store opened. The Northeast Greensboro community alleviated its food desert. The store officially opened on October 14, 2016. By the end of that month, the Renaissance Community Co-op had over 1,000 community owners of the store. This store opening represents the power of the community to overcome obstacles towards their racial and economic oppression. However, this is just the beginning. The Northeast Greensboro community is continuing to organize, not only for access to healthy food options, but also to strive for more equity in health outcomes.
The store opened back in October, and it is really great. Everyone who comes in says that it's really beautiful, and personally I take pride in that, because when I told my mother about this store, the first thing she said was to make sure that it is pretty, make sure that it looks good. And because she remembers shopping in places when she was growing up, and she said that places liked to remind you that you were poor and that you had to shop there. And she said make sure that you make it somewhere beautiful.
Well, the community meeting has been such a lifeline for myself. I know that it sounds cliche to say, but it's like when times have always gotten tough, just looking around at the room and how many years of activism and community work has been in there, and what, just being able to at least point to I've developed these relationships. If nothing else happens, I've developed these relationships, and this is a feeling of what being in community feels like. And I think if you can get to that sweet spot where you're looking around at whatever you're doing in community and you have those warm, fuzzy feelings, and your imagination is going 1,000 miles a minute, and you're just thinking that's what it feels like to be fully seen. That's what it feels like to feel safe around the people around you. And when you feel safe, you want to take more risks with each other. And with taking more risks, you got to reward each other for taking those risks. And I think we could be doing a better job of celebrating our more recent occurrences, because once we opened the store, it's been a lot of day-to-day, just the grind of, how do you operate a grocery store and make it successful. But, I do think we have a good record of showing a lot of compassion for each other and showing a lot of care and enthusiasm with each other. And I think that's just, you can't underestimate celebrating and being in communion with each other, even if you don't necessarily feel like it's all moving in the ways that you should. If you can retain positivity and respect and love for each other, then everything's really going to be fine, because everything already is fine in that moment, so why can't it be fine tomorrow or whatever you're investing in?